The Minnesota Vikings have a winning record, but for some reason the vibes are in the gutter. Let's flip that around. Let's get a little spin zone going here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. A reminder that you can follow Locked On Vikings and hear new episodes ad-free daily on Amazon Music. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the show, we're not doing predictions. We're not doing the Zoever under because there is no game for the Vikings this week. They are on a bye as they rest from their grueling London trip. And coming off of a 1-1 Euro trip, and what has been, in the kindest terms, an up and down season, they are staring down the barrel of some of the toughest teams in the league. The defending Super Bowl champion Eagles, and then a short week off to the West Coast with the Chargers, then the Lions, the Ravens. It's going to be a really tough month for the Vikings. And so what I am feeling, this is just a feeling that I'm getting from the way people talk about this, is that because the Vikings didn't go like 5-0 or 4-1 through the kind of weaker start to their schedule with a lot of teams that like weren't playoff teams last year, and were perceived preseason to be a little weaker. And not to mention the one team that was perceived to be a little bit stronger ended up being like in total shambles by the time the Vikings played them, and the Bengals. But because that stretch didn't go 4-1 or 5-0, and they're expected to lose all these other ones, that they're staring down the barrel of going from 3-2 to just free falling to 3-6. And those 4 games, you just chalk them up as losses. And oh no, the Vikings might as well already be 3-6. Let's fire up the mock draft sim. I take some umbrage with this. The NFL just is not that predictable. You can't parlay 4 games. The Vikings might not even be underdogs in all those games if the wrong person gets injured, or if the vibes are weird, or if they get a little bit more for home field advantage in one of those games. They will be at home for a lot of it. The vibes are weird with Philadelphia. We'll actually get into that in a little bit, but I think that there are more reasons for optimism than we are giving credit for. I'm with you that these first 5 games haven't felt great, even though they've been wins, right? Like 2 of these have been comebacks where they played like kind of butt for the first like large portion of the game, the first 3 quarters, maybe even more. And the one that they did win in a blowout, everybody has been blowing out the Bengals, so it doesn't feel special. Morally, the Vikings are 0-5, right? They're moral defeats all over the place. You can always make a moral defeat out of anything, though. I've seen very few wins that you can't make a moral defeat out of, because that's just the way that some people think. They just look at whatever the most negative thing is and go, oh, woe is me about it. There are reasons, though, to be excited and to sort of look at the struggles that the Vikings had and realize that some of those reasons aren't going to stick around. They have a bye week coming at the right time, and there are a lot of players that are hopefully going to be able to come off of it. Chief among them, J.J. McCarthy. They have some unsung names, particularly on the defense, that are absolutely showing out, that seem like the real deal. And this tough part of the schedule doesn't seem nearly as tough as it looked at the beginning of the season. And the weaker part of the schedule they just played seems like there might be some teams on there that look a little better. So let's dive into those reasons for optimism and put on a little bit of a spin zone. And the first thing is, J.J. McCarthy's coming back. Now, I argued pretty definitively for J.J. McCarthy coming back, taking the start, which appears to be the case, and not like rolling with Wentz and treating this like a hot hand Case Keenum situation. I still feel very, very confident in that. A lot of people argued with me in the comments. Thank you for your opinions, but I just don't see it. I trust what my eyes see, and I just don't see that that's the situation that we're looking at here with like our true QB controversy. And so just given that, just like moving past that and assuming that, yes, JJ McCarthy will come in, then suddenly all the hype around this season is like back on the menu. When we started this season, there was no Christian Darrisaw, there was no Jordan Addison those first two games, right? You had TJ Hawkinson in slow mode for some reason in the the Atlanta game, but you also had TJ Hawkinson. You had to spend him on covering for Justin School, which they kind of still had to, as Darrisaw is still on a pitch count and now Brian O'Neill is hurt. So they still had to for a lot of that. But like, if those guys are back on the other side of the bye, which is very possible, you can use TJ Hawkinson as the receiving weapon you wanted to use him as, instead of as a get out of jail free card for the biggest problem you have up front. It's nice that guy can be worth either of those things. But you don't want to use him as TJ Blockinson if you don't have to. And that outlet can be huge for a young quarterback, especially one that's maybe a little slower on his reads. But further than that, there is something super like that we're not super used to as Vikings fans, considering we've watched like veterans pretty much exclusively over the last 20 years, outside of a couple of brief chapters where, you know, it was Christian Ponder or Teddy Bridgewater. We don't really watch young quarterbacks a lot in Minnesota. It's a lot more Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold's coming through, or, you know, your carousels of Case Keenums and Sam Bradfords is a lot more. And that means that those guys walk into the building and they are who they are. And I think we feel the same way about Carson Wentz. When Carson Wentz makes a mistake, you don't go, oh, he's going to learn and grow from that. No, that's just the thing you put up with when it's Carson Wentz. If, you know, Kirk Cousins made a mistake, you couldn't say, oh, he'll never do that again, because you knew he would do that again. It's going to happen again, and it's going to cost you a game again, and it's going to be the same thing year over year over year. And it was hard to kind of convince yourself that this year was going to be different. With McCarthy, with any of these young quarterbacks, when McCarthy makes a mistake, it's pretty easy to say, all right, hopefully he grows from that. Hopefully this is something that only young quarterbacks, especially when he makes mistakes that are common of young quarterbacks. I look at that pick six that he threw against Chicago. That's when you see a lot of young quarterbacks throw, as they realize that, you know, defensive backs are faster and they jump routes a little quicker than you're used to. And then old quarterbacks throw it a lot as they don't have the velocity they used to have. It's something that it's the kind of pick you throw when you're not used to the timing in the real world of the NFL, when maybe you spent a year doing just mental reps and you didn't quite get the sense and feel for space and time that you need, right? And you hope that that doesn't happen. Now, if JJ McCarthy throws that pick six again, I'm going to be really upset, because that's something that you really need to learn from and never, ever, ever do again. But it's a little easier to cope with that than if, say, I'm an Eagles fan and Jalen Hurts throws that pick six. I'm a lot more concerned about that. But beyond JJ McCarthy coming back and giving you back that sort of, okay, things can go poorly, but we can still feel like it will grow. And we can still feel like it's growing pains, not just we're bad. Beyond all that, coming off of this bye, so many of the problems are no longer there. The Christian Darrisaw pitch count has been a huge thorn in the Vikings' side. Hopefully that's no longer the case after a whole week of rest and then another week of practice. He's getting to that 10-month landmark. No, he's getting to that 12-month landmark. He's already well past the 10-month. He's getting to the 12-month landmark, which is usually 9 to 12 is like the classic recovery timeline for an ACL MCL. Is like 10 to 12 months. He came in at the beginning of that 10 months. And now we're drawing closer, or at the beginning of the season, and he was like close to starting, was like the beginning. We're drawing closer to the 12 part. And hopefully that means we just have Darrisaw, not like on a pitch count. And then on the other side, Brian O'Neill with his MCL sprain. The thing about the MCL versus the ACL is that it is outside. It's like more exterior. It gets better blood flow. It heals better on its own, which is why it's like a 2 to 6 month recovery timeline and no surgery required, no IR required, rather than oops, season ending surgery. It's a much easier ligament to deal with. And And so, 2 to 6, well, we're already in his window now. And he could also be out for 3 more weeks. We don't really know. But at least there's a possibility where we start watching the practice report for him. And that O-line starts to come together a little bit more. Donovan Jackson coming off that wrist injury, that comes back a little bit more. And so you look at like the Browns game and this issue of like, oh my God, we had 4 backups in on the line. Well, 3 of those 4 could be out the next time the Vikings take the field and their starters could be back. That's huge. Not to mention, we have never seen McCarthy playing with Christian Darrisaw, nor have we seen McCarthy playing with Jordan Addison, and you remember the chemistry those guys had in camp. There's a big reason to believe that this offense is going to hopefully get a lot of pieces back and hopefully work out a little bit better than it did to begin the season when they were trying to piece it all together. There's also a logistics thing, and this doesn't get so much easier because they have a short week going to the West Coast, but after that, it's a little more normal. But they had a Monday night, which meant a short week, plus J.J. McCarthy missed a key practice because of a baby being born, which you got to be there. But so that messed up that week, and then he was hurt. So he's really had like one normal week of practice and one incredibly not normal week of practice. And then they had the quarterback switch happening because so they were trying to get Carson Wentz ready. And then they've had this Europe trip. Their practice schedule has been messed up a lot by just like weird scheduling stuff. And once you're past that short week and you get that next mini bye after the Chargers game, things normalize out a lot. And hopefully the Vikings can find a little bit more of a rhythm and a stride as the routine gets a little more regular. That matters, but is not something that teams are going to like willfully talk about a lot, but Kevin O'Connell has. But it's not just the offense getting its key pieces back. The defense has a couple of guys on there that are emerging as something bigger than we thought they were, and it's worth celebrating. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Supply House. Get your crew pushing forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting away projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, if you want to try to get parts cheaper than if you're just going to like hire somebody that's going to do it all, but they're going to charge you through the nose, maybe you want to find a way to get the parts and then just pay for the labor if you're trying to put a project together with a more sensible budget. And their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every little detail matters, and saving the time and knowing what you're doing can make all the difference. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Patreon update, patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. The episode I did yesterday about TJ Watt and Myles Garrett and like handling superstar edge rushers when you have backup O-linemen, especially a backup tackle, much maligned in Justin School, and the other guys know that, and they're going to line up their superstar on that guy all day. How do you deal with that? Well, I did a whole episode detailing that, showing you kind of what I was talking about and all the little schematic things. Go check it out. But what I want to talk about on defense now is especially 2 guys that are really showing out. I know we've had some issues with really 3 guys that have either taken a big step forward or are just a lot more than we thought they were. The obvious one is Isaiah Rodgers. He had his supernova game in week 3 against the Bengals, the 2 touchdowns, crazy stuff, really awesome. But he's been good outside of that. The corners in Flores' defense just don't have to do a lot. And it's why you can kind of get away with reclamation projects all the time. It's why the defense has worked with that. I've called in off seasons for them to invest a little bit more because I want more multiplicity. I want them to be able to switch to man coverage if the zones are getting picked apart. And here's what's been cool about Isaiah Rodgers is if he's going up against somebody in man, if he's locked off for whatever reason, sometimes the coverage dictates that, right? You're in quarters and it's a middle field open coverage, it's a zone, but the routes that you see mean you just get one receiver the whole time and it turns into functionally man technique and man coverage. He's good in those reps. He's been on guys like that. And it hasn't exactly been easy. He's had Drake London and Jamar Chase and Jerry Jeudy and DK Metcalf. Like, these are not slouches of receivers. And when you can play those, you put yourself in great positions to be opportunistic when anything the offense does is imperfect. Defense at a super like broad global level, beyond Flores' defense, NFL defense in general, is about making it difficult. You're not really trying to create something on defense. You're trying to prevent something. You're trying to sabotage something, right? And the offense is the one that's trying to do creation. And so when you are trying to make chaos in the way that the Flores defense does, it creates opportunities for big plays. But you have to be able to capitalize on those opportunities. You got to catch the picks that come to you, and Isaiah Rodgers has done that. You have to, if they're going to be loose with the football, you have to punch it out. Isaiah Rodgers has done that. So those happen. And I'm going to think a long time about that Hail Mary at the end of the Browns game that didn't count, that Isaiah Rodgers was the one that came down with it. I'm going to think about that for like throughout the whole bye here, because that's like the dude there's just a playmaker to it, right? And when you're on, and with corner, earned confidence is like so important. Unearned confidence can maybe even be more important if you're struggling. That's how you break out of it. But like, as a cornerback, especially an off coverage cornerback, which is what the Vikings play almost exclusively is off coverage, you have to play that game of chicken of how much cushion am I going to give you? And for Rodgers, who's, fast as the wind, he can play really fast and loose with that cushion and get a bunch of advantages off of that. It allows him to keep his eyes on the quarterback for longer. It allows him to break on things more quickly. It allows him to look at other stuff because it's just, I'm just not worried about you beating me on a go route because I know I can turn around and catch up. That confidence has allowed him to play a more advanced style of cornerback. But that speed doesn't do anything if you don't believe in the speed. And that's why, like, cornerbacks kind of famously fall away. Even if they'll have two great seasons and then kind of like be washed. It's because if you lose that confidence and you start playing a more conservative game, then you start turning into, I backed off and I let everything be caught in front of me and I made all the tackles and I limited things, but I let a bunch of 10-yard catches happen in front of me because I was like scared of something worse. Isaiah Rodgers is playing with the utmost confidence right now. And if that confidence persists and metastasizes into something permanent, we just have a dude. And suddenly this cornerback room looks so different with, okay, Murphy and Rodgers, those are your main two guys. And now you're just kind of like moving around guys on the edges. That makes the secondary feel so different. It's awesome. On a similar note, I've been so critical of the defensive tackles. And while Jalen Redmond is not free of sin when it comes to the run defense, he's one of the guys you're probably the least mad at about it. And that dude's been playing awesome ball. He's been disruptive. He's been penetrating. He is somebody that when he is on the field, it's been a long time since you're going, okay, well, let's hope the rotational guy just survives while the real starter catches his breath. No, Jalen Redmond is like a real part of this defense and a real weapon for them. I'm really excited about Jalen Redmond. And I kind of had the feeling after the first couple of games, I was like, this guy might get paid in the middle of this. Like, we might be seeing contract news about him like tomorrow. Like, the bye week could be an interesting time to do it, or maybe the mini bye, which is around the trade deadline after the Chargers game, after they play on a short week. Could be an interesting time to get that done. Redmond is currently playing on the exclusive rights free agent tender, which is turns into basically just a 1-year deal. So he's slated to become a free agent. And I really don't want him to let him out the building. I think this guy can really be a building block to the sort of finalized version of this defense, a real long-term part of the Vikings defense. Even if Flores is out, it's just, man, a penetrating guy on the inside like that can just be so valuable. It's so nice to see a guy that was kind of, oh, what a great story he made the team, turn into more than a make-a-wish, more than a guy who you're just happy made it there. But if he struggles a little bit, you're like, that's still understandable. He was like a UFL guy. No, he's a good player. And adding that to the rotation of Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave has given the Vikings a really intense pass rush. There are teams out there that really require you, especially if you have a quarterback that's good against the blitz, that require you to win with 4 up front. If you're going to get pressure, you have to get pressure with 4 because the quarterback's doing too much. You need all 7 in coverage, and they'll punish you if you blitz. And Redmond can be part of that equation to get that against those quarterbacks. And the last guy that's exciting to me is Dallas Turner. It's been quiet, but effective. And I know he's starting to like pop up in like some of these efficiency stats that I'm not a huge fan of, like pass rush win rate and stuff, but more so Dallas Turner is becoming the king of just folding in a tackle, whether it's in a pocket and you're just walking him back into the quarterback, or whether it's like on the front side of zone where they're not getting the push that they want to get against you. He is he's looking more like the college version of himself. This was always Dallas Turner's game, was like getting up under somebody that was maybe bigger and stronger than him and just leveraging him and moving that lineman somewhere he didn't want to be. And that's sort of unheralded work because it usually means someone else gets the tackle. If you ruin the angle, the running back's going to go run somewhere else and get tackled by somebody else, but you ruined the angle and forced him to do something to go somewhere suboptimal. So you had that disruption, but you're never going to show up in the stat sheet over it. This has been the case a lot. And for all the run defense problems, Dallas Turner getting like caught inside, I think has happened like twice all year. And there are probably 10 times as many examples of him folding something in, forcing the running back to cut back, and then maybe there's a cutback lane because someone else screwed up, but like that's not on him, And then from a pressure perspective, those get the quarterback to move. If you think about guys like Caleb Williams running around all day, a lot of that was Dallas Turner. Even if it didn't log as a specific pressure, he's walking a lineman back and getting the quarterback to feel kind of antsy. Jake Browning, this happened to a ton. Dallas Turner had a huge day against the Bengals. And it happened to Dylan Gabriel as well. Getting more out of him is fantastic. This guy is no longer feels like this sort of young rotational, what's he going to be? Why aren't we getting more out of him kind of guy? Now it's like, okay, this is what Dallas Turner does. How does our defense maximize that? And what kind of impact is it having on everybody else? And when you start looking into that question, you start to see some really exciting stuff. And yeah, the Vikings have some hard games coming up, but they're not nearly as tough as they looked as they looked before the season. So let's talk about this next stretch. And is it really that scary? Let's get into it. Next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's a great time to get involved with FanDuel here on the bye week. If you want something to just have a reason to care about whatever game is on in your area, why don't you go take a look and sign up right now? New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You could always do the classic emotional hedge. Take the Philadelphia Eagles money line. It's -152. That's not a lot of juice, but you will get $300 for a $5 wager if it hits, or something else that you're super confident in, like a really heavy favorite like the Packers over the Bengals, or something else that you're super confident in. Or you can just start looking at the futures bets. You can still bet on the Vikings to make or miss the playoffs. Right now, they're plus 250 to make the playoffs. Not a lot of belief at all. So if you're believing in some of the optimistic stuff I'm talking about today, you could go lay $5 on that. Whatever it is, football is so much more exciting when you got something riding on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Let's talk about just how spooky scary this big bad chunk is in front. It's going to be a gauntlet. It's going to be challenging. Nobody's easy ever. And the thing we always do with this schedule is you look at NFL schedules and you treat them like college schedules. This just happens a lot. I mean, the royal you, not you, dear listener. Maybe you don't do this, but there's no Appalachian State. There's no, Maryland, Ohio State. Nobody's 42-3ing, there's never going to be 27-point spreads in the NFL. It's just not really how it works. The highest it ever goes is like 17, which like what you're looking at with like Packers Bengals. And because those teams are a lot closer, but it doesn't feel that way, right? You look at, wow, they start the season with Bears, Falcons, and then Browns, Steelers. Wow, they should win all of those games. They better win. If they don't win, oh my God, we're concerned. And when it comes time to play teams that we perceive as weaker right now, like the Cowboys or maybe the Giants, although they look pretty fun on Thursday Night Football, so maybe that won't last. But that's kind of the point I'm making, is it doesn't last. The way you feel about a team changes drastically in the span of 4 days. Just look at the Giants. 5 days ago, they were reeling, coming off of a loss to Spencer Rattler and the New Orleans Saints, who hadn't won a game with Spencer Rattler as the starter in 11 tries, and they got him on the 12th, and you were on the wrong side of it. Like, you are walking into that Thursday night game against the Eagles very much thinking Dable could get fired if it goes bad. And they end up dropping a hammer on their division rival and defending Super Bowl champions. Now you feel totally different about the Giants, don't you? You feel like maybe they could be figuring something out because the young quarterback finally had a good game. And that kind of vibe can happen to the Vikings too. Let's say the Vikings do walk into one of these games and J.J. McCarthy lights somebody up. It's not impossible, right? There's still a lot of unknown. If he has like a good, productive game, everything that happened in that Atlanta game suddenly feels like, oh, that was just a stepping stone on the way to this because he was young. The vibes change a lot. And looking just at these teams, the vibes around the Eagles have changed quite a bit now too. They just lost to Bo Nix and Jackson Dart respectively. That's not a team that I feel like has, they've got a young quarterback against Vic Fangio. He's going to figure it out. No, he just got drilled by two young quarterbacks. And here comes a third, possibly. We'll see what the injury report says about J.J. McCarthy and just exactly when his return is. But if it is coming back, that was kind of the point of the first segment. But the vibes are weird in Philly. I'm actually super excited to talk next week to Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles about the vibes and, the AJ Brown stuff and the run game suddenly falling apart and what the deal is with Jalen Carter. And like suddenly all these issues with the Eagles, you're getting them at a really weird time. They've lost 2 games in a row for the first time since 2023. They're no longer invincible. And you now got a blueprint for how to do that, even with a quarterback that maybe is still struggling to see the field as easily as he could be, right? Like Jackson Dart is still very new to this. He's not going to see the field like a 10-year veteran would. There's now a blueprint for moving the ball on these guys. The Chargers are even more banged up than the Vikings up front. They're missing both of their running backs. They have a whole bunch of issues, and they just dropped one unceremoniously to the Commanders at home. The Lions, the division is always difficult, and they are not the Lions of old, even though they've been really hot. The Packers still kind of found a way to get one over on them. And the Ravens might not have Lamar Jackson. So suddenly the idea of like, let's just survive this stretch and go 2-2 feels more than doable. What about what if they went 3-1 here and you're looking at 6-3 going into a home game against the Bears that they'll be favored in, and then a road game against the Packers near Thanksgiving that will, then you're thinking, okay, this could vault the Vikings directly into the division, into the NFC North race if they win these 2 divisional games, especially if they can take one on the Lions. So suddenly, like, it's easy to talk yourself into all of these games, which is why I just don't like looking at that and saying, oh, well, they're going to drop all 4 of those. They could also win all 4 of those. You just don't know. And the vibes around a team, the way you feel about them, this will get reflected in the betting odds too. I mean, we examine it every week on the Zoever Under. change drastically day to day, let alone week to week. That's why I always say, let's take this thing one at a time. And I'm looking at this Eagles team and seeing all the issues that they're dealing with and all the talent that they have too, and see an interesting matchup. That's going to be pretty fun to preview next week. And then we'll talk about the Chargers. And then after that, we'll talk about the Lions and so on. What I'm getting at here isn't that the Vikings problems don't exist and you can pull the wool over your eyes and everything's just going to be okay. That's not what I'm doing here. If that's what you think I'm trying to say, then you've misunderstood the show. What I am trying to say is the Vikings are 3-2. They're medium in a lot of things, and that means that there is some good and there is some bad. And if you're pointing out one without pointing out the other, you're pushing something. And I'm trying not to push something on this show. I've been pretty negative this last week. And so I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged that there is still plenty to be excited about. And the Vikings have 12 more opportunities to change the vibes around the season. If you take down the Eagles, who are still a very good team, even though they're in a weird spot right now, and you ascend to 4-2, suddenly the fact that they didn't play great until the fourth quarter in week 1 feels like it is millions of years away. It's a what have you done for me lately league, which means that the most important game, as always, is the next one. I'll see you all next week, and as always, Skol.